Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Ajax Heritage Advisory Committee meeting for Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020. This meeting is being held electronically and live streamed on the internet. All staff and committee members are participating by phone or video. All regular practices and procedures of the committee continue to apply during this electronic meeting. If we encounter any technical difficulties, we may take a brief recess while they are resolved. Thank you for your patience. We will now proceed with the meeting. Before moving into the discussion items on the agenda, I would like to ask if there are any conflicts of interest from the committee members with any items to be discussed this evening. Okay, seeing none, thank you. And if we can look for adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting dated November 4, 2020. Do we have a motion to adopt the minutes? Anderson, seconded by Jeff. All those in favor? Thank you, that is carried. I will then go straight into our agenda items. Number 4, presentation and discussions. And I will ask Mike to just take over from here with items 4.1 to 4.4, if you don't mind.
All right, thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
All right, can everyone see that? Yep. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. As was mentioned, I have 4 items. I just forgot to update the title sheet, but 4 items today to go to, with the first one being the heritage permit for the O'Connor farm property. So everyone who was involved in last month's meeting will be aware of this property. But just to highlight it again, it's located on the north side of Roslyn Road, just west of Lake Ridge Road. And this is an 1840s stone farmhouse for which the owners are proposing some renovations. So as we went over last time, essentially what they're looking to do is partially remove a rear addition that exists today, and to add some additions to the east and west, as well as a new rear addition, as well as making some updates to the historic portion of the property. So last time around, we made the motion that staff continue to work with the applicant to address existing concerns and report back to the committee upon making a decision on the matter or escalating the item to council. The idea was that I would continue to work with the applicants, and hopefully over the following weeks, we would end up in a situation where I was satisfied with the state of their application. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. I met on site with the applicant to answer some of the questions, but I'm still awaiting some information. So what I'm doing tonight is I'm going to provide an update on some of the information that I have gathered. In terms of our last meeting, I think there were a number of concerns that came up, many of which I raised, but some of which were raised by members of the committee as well. So what I wanted to do tonight was to go over some of those concerns, take a little more detailed look at what is actually being proposed by the applicant. So the first one I'll mention is the orientation of the additions. So this is something that I believe Bruce brought up in the conversation last time. And when we look at the layout of the property, we can see that due to the existing landscaping in the backyard, there's a limited area within which they can work. So the fact that their additions are spreading out sort of east and west rather than north is, I think, largely representative of that fact, as well as I mentioned at the last meeting, the part of the addition that's going to be on the east side of the property is a garage. So it makes sense to keep the existing landscape layout with the driveway on the east side of the property approaching the garage where it's proposed. Also, when we look at so this slide here shows the existing footprint of the building on the left and then what is proposed on the right. So one of the things that I think this application does do well is it's really kept the additions away from the historic central part of the house. So when you look at that, the area that's entirely encircled in red there on the right-hand side, there's really nothing new being built off that with the exception of the porches and the dormers that we spoke about last time around. So I think they have done a fairly good job working within the restrictions that are there. I did want to make sure when I was out on site that the addition on the east side wasn't going to interfere with any of the existing vegetation, and they were able to inform me that it won't. So there's a hedgerow there that's going to be maintained. There will have to be a few smaller trees removed due to the location of the addition, but overall, they found a way to work really within the area that they have available to them. So the second item was some concerns about the porches, and Pam raised a good point. She had asked a question about whether or not the porches were actually listed as heritage attributes in the designation bylaw. I answered that they were, and upon going back afterwards, I was only half correct in that statement. So the eastern porch, which is the one that was added, I believe, in the late 80s or early 90s, and was apparently designed to match a historic image. That is specifically mentioned in the designation bylaw. However, the front porch is not. And I've been working with Brenda trying to find this historic image that is being referenced when we talk about the eastern porch. We've yet to come across anything, but we've got a couple more areas to look. But I was given this image here by the applicant, which I'm assuming dates to the 1960s. That's a very sort of broad guess. It could be the 1950s. It could be even later than the 60s. But it helps to showcase that I don't believe there was a front porch originally on this house. So last time we talked a little bit about any markings along the front. I wasn't able to recognize anything. There's no sort of ghosting or anything like that that's visible. And this image from probably around 50 or 60 years ago seems to show at that time, again, there was no front porch. So going back to the porch designs that the applicants had provided, because they are quite basic, quite classic in their proportions, I think they are a fairly good fit for this application. And there hasn't really been any other information in regard to the porches that has come forward. I mentioned as well that I think one of the major things that we should be focusing on here is the roofing material. So currently there is cedar shingles and it's the applicant's preference to go to an asphalt product. So this is something that we've dealt with on many other properties. And typically we want to see that texture of the cedar shakes retained. So I have indicated that this is something that we're going to be holding strong on. And I've indicated that the entire building does not have to be covered with with either authentic shingles or with replica cedar shingles. It can just be the historic portions of the house. So when you look at the roof plan that I have on the screen here, you can see that this is actually a very complicated design. There's a lot of different roofing components, but it's only the ones that relate to the historic portion of the building that I think need to be either authentic cedar or replica cedar. The applicant has told me that they would prefer to do the entire roof in one material, whatever that material may be. So they're looking into the costing for Enviro shakes at the moment, but I haven't heard back from them yet. So we're really not going to be able to advance this application until we get more specifics on what they're doing with the roofing. The soffits, vinyl soffits were listed, and that was something that concerned me because obviously we want to stick with historic material where it already exists. Upon going out to the site, it became clear that all the soffits on the historic portion of the building have been replaced with aluminum anyway. Um, so as long as we can get something that's an upgrade compared to what you see here on the screen, I think we'll really be doing our job. So they won't have to go back to any authentic material, but they should use a material that's a little bit better match for the design of the building. The chimneys are also all in a state of repair where they'll need replacing. This is the rear chimney, which is, I believe, proposed to be removed altogether. As you can see here, the upper portion of the building has been rebuilt. This is not historic fabric at all. But the chimneys that will be rebuilt on the front portion of the historic building will be rebuilt to their historic appearance. And I'll be working with the applicants to ensure that the proper materials are chosen for that. I also mentioned that I had some concerns with the replacement of the front door because when the initial application package came in, there wasn't much in the way of direction in terms of what the new front door will look like. And I didn't have any records about the conditions of the existing front door. So upon going out to the site, I was able to take a look, and this clearly isn't an original door. It's a door that's been heavily modified over time. So what I've asked for is actually shop drawings from the manufacturer of the door because they will be having the door custom made. So prior to advancing this application, I'll have to receive those and take a look at them and make sure that that they are appropriate for the style of the building. On site, it was confirmed by the owner that they will be keeping the recess that you see in the picture on the right-hand side of the screen. So I think that's a really interesting feature because what it does is it helps to demonstrate the width of those masonry walls, which is quite an interesting feature. And then the paneling doesn't look to be original to me, but they will be keeping something in that style. The windows are all proposed to be replaced. This again was of concern to me because I wasn't quite sure of the whether or not these were original wood windows. Upon a closer review on site, none of the windows are original windows or even historic windows of any kind. So all of the windows have already been replaced with modern materials. So you can see in the photo to the right that the muntins are actually built right into between two layers of glass, and they're not wood, they're a modern material. So the windows that are being proposed are actually an upgrade from the existing. So the last major concern that I had was on the demolition of the rear and the west walls of the historic rear addition. These two areas of the building will actually be interior walls at this point. So the applicant has asked that they be removed. At this point, I'm waiting on getting some images from inside the house from the applicant just to see the condition of those walls and get a better sense of, if anything's being retained at all, and how the layout will be impacted. So I think one of the interesting things that the applicant is doing is all of the historic fabric that's being removed from the walls will be repurposed within the new portions of the building to be built. So any masonry that's being removed from rear walls is proposed to be used in new fireplaces on site. So as I mentioned, there's a number of pieces of information that I'm still awaiting before I can advance this application. In my perspective at this point, the two main things that we need to work through are the roofing material as well as those masonry walls and exactly what's going to happen with them and their existing condition. If we are provided with all this information and everything is to my satisfaction, then based on the last motion that was made, I will be able to grant the approval for this project. So just to give an idea of some of the work that's been going into this is a massive project. So over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of back and forth between myself and the applicant, just to ensure that I do have a fulsome understanding of exactly what's being proposed. So these are just slides that I'll flip through quickly, where I've been trying to point out all of the changes that I see between the existing plans and then the proposed plans, and just getting confirmation from the applicant about exactly what is happening. So it's been a bit of a long and labor-intensive process, but we're slowly working through it. So any questions on that one before I move along to the next item?
Go ahead.
Sorry, not a question, or observation. In the picture you showed a 1960. I think the windows are different from what's there now.
They are, yes. They appear to be modern as well. They're
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So I mean, if we can find that historic photo that was used to determine the appearance of the porch, that should give us some clues to the types of windows as well. So that's a really important tool for us, and it's a little unfortunate the way that the bylaw amendment was done last time, because, you know, as I've quoted here, the bylaw was specifically amended to add a line that said and a veranda on the east side of the house as shown in an early photograph of the building. But that photograph was never included in the designation bylaw. Had it been, we wouldn't have any of the issues that we're having today. So that's a lesson learned. As I said, a little unfortunate that we didn't actually include that within the amendment, but that happens to be the case. So we'll see what we can find.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I'll move right along. So the second item I'll be addressing tonight is the Heritage Impact Assessment for 625 Kingston Road West, which is the Chapman House. So the Chapman House is located on the south side of Kingston Road, just south of the Pickering Village Heritage Conservation District. So this is an image of the building from the front, probably a building that most of us recognize. And this building has been identified by the committee for inclusion on our inventory of non-designated properties. So when we evaluated this back in 2016 or 2017, we determined that it hit in 5 of the different 9 criterion under Ontario Regulation 906. Now, back in June 2018, we did an initial review of a site plan application that came in. And that application was to convert, excuse me, convert the existing property, which was formerly a dwelling, but was most recently used as a medical office, to convert that into a place of worship. And this was going to be done by retaining the historic building and using that as the office component of the property, and then building a new sanctuary to the rear of the house. So at that time, when the application first came into planning staff, there was no heritage impact statement. So we requested that, and at the time, back in June 2018, we also discussed the potential for bringing this forward for designation under the Ontario Heritage Act. So the motion that was made at that time was that the Chapman House, 625 Kingston Road West, become the Heritage Advisory Committee's priority property for future designation if the forthcoming Heritage Impact Statement evaluates it to have heritage value under Ontario Regulation 906. And this did come during the, I guess, the previous Heritage Committee. So some members, current members, would not have seen this application. So as I mentioned, the historic portion of the house will be retained essentially as it is, with some minor demolition on the rear to remove a 1960s sort of two-layered porch, and removal of the detached garage. And then at the rear of the property, the sanctuary component of the place of worship will be built. So a revised submission of the site plan application came in a few weeks back, and this one did actually include a heritage impact assessment. That assessment concluded that the Chapman House is of cultural heritage value or interest, with the exception of the rear addition and the detached garage, which are proposed for demolition. It did also say that the proposed development will have impacts on the house, but those will be minor to negligible, and they can be mitigated by protecting the house during construction and by having the applicant complete a conservation plan. So one thing that I always like to do is look at the committee's evaluation of a property and then compare that to the evaluation completed by the professional heritage consultant. And I think we have a pretty good track record in terms of where we see value and where those consultants see value. So again, I think our evaluation was very, very close to that of the heritage consultant. There were just a couple different areas where there were differing opinions. So we said that we believed the property displays a high degree of craftsmanship or artistic merit. The consultant did not. However, we did not identify the building as a landmark, and the heritage consultant did. So both of us sort of saw that this property satisfied 5 different criteria, and most of those there was overlap on. So in terms of the next steps for us, one thing that we have to do is just to officially receive the heritage impact assessment. This is something that it states in the town's official plan must be done. So that's our first step. And then I've already requested that the applicant complete a conservation plan. And what this will do is this is going to outline strategies that they'll use in order to conserve all of the heritage attributes and the important heritage value of this property. So that report's actually partially written, but then partially graphic as well, demonstrating all the changes that are going to happen to the property, as well as some of the repairs that will need to happen to the historic portion of the building. Once that conservation plan is submitted and approved, we can then begin taking steps to designate the property under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So I've put a sample motion out here for the committee to discuss. As I always say, you guys are welcome to change this. If you don't think it's appropriate, you don't have to make this motion at all, but this is just a template for what you may want to put forward.
Neil?
Question, Mike. How much say do we have on the design of the new addition at the back? It looks like a glorified cow barn from what I see from that outline you showed before.
I mean, you absolutely can make comments on the rear design. That was a very simple drawing that doesn't show the materials. I can forward to the committee the whole suite of materials that give a little better indication of what the addition will look like. The addition is quite simple in its massing, and I think that's a good thing for the most part, because what it does is it allows attention to be drawn and maintained to the historic portion of the building rather than distracting from that. But the applicant has also taken great care to ensure that proper materials are used to draw comparisons between the historic portion and the new portion. And there's also going to be a sort of change of scale within the building. So somebody that enters through the front door of the existing house would be able to get all the way into the church area at the back. However, when you look at the building from the outside, it will still look like a house in the front and then with a large building in the back. So that was something that we actually wanted to be done. We didn't want the new addition to sort of overwhelm the historic house. So there was great care taken in trying to keep them as distinct and separate masses. So, I mean, if you have comments now, please provide those. But like I said, I can also send out the full suite of drawings, which will give you a better sense of what it looks like.
Just part two on that. How many parking spaces are they applying for?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was around 50 parking spaces were what they were required to provide. And if I remember correctly, they either did provide it or they came within just a few parking spaces from doing so. So I can take a look into the application and report back on that.
Thanks, Mike.
No problem.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Jeff.
I guess, do we know if that church is already active in Pickering Village? Is this sort of like a move upwards for them from an existing building?
So they aren't active in Pickering Village. And one of the discussions that we had last time was trying to look at underutilized places of worship in the area that they could move into. And I specifically had one in mind. I know that there's forget the name of the church, but it's just a little further west along Kingston Road. And I had thought it was vacant. It turns out that there's actually a congregation that meets there as well. So this is a new endeavor for them. I believe it's they're coming from, might be the eastern side of Toronto. I can look into that, but they're not a group that currently meets in Pickering Village or Ajax.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? Mike, would you like us to move for a motion?
Yeah, if
okay.
this is a motion that the committee is comfortable with, then please feel free.
Okay, may I have someone move for the motion? That's Neil, a seconder. Stephen, thank you. That is carried, or all in favor, sorry. Okay, everyone, thank you, that's carried.
All right, so moving right along to the Langsdorff Drive renaming. And this is just an update on an item that everybody was circulated on a few weeks ago. So for those that are unfamiliar with Langsdorff Drive, this is a road that runs east-west between Michaelman Road and Pickering Beach Road, just south of Bailey Street. So there are 52 different units on this street. And this is one that has a long story behind it. So back in October 1998, the town received a request to name a street after Hans Langsdorff, who we know from previous conversations was the captain of the Graf Spee, the German warship involved in the Battle of the River Plate. So the gentleman who made this request was actually an author living in Ontario that was writing a book on the Battle of the River Plate, and specifically Hans Langsdorff and his life and involvement in that battle. So this recommendation or request to the town came in just in advance of what would have been the 60th anniversary of the Battle of the River Plate. And this was seen as an opportunity to commemorate his role in the battle. So at the time that staff and council were doing research on this item, Langsdorff was largely regarded as an exceptional naval officer who adhered to all of the international rules of war that he was supposed to. His decision to scuttle the ship was made in defiance of Nazi orders, and it was that decision he said he had to make in order to save the lives of his crew, and in doing so also likely save the lives of many on the Allied side. So even back when this was first done, there was some controversy around it because, you know, as we've discussed as a committee, there are still a number of Allied veterans that haven't been commemorated with a street. So it was something that some parties did not feel comfortable with, but the majority did support this initiative. And I think that was done largely because it was being done in the spirit of reconciliation. And there was a lot of consultation that happened at the time with various organizations that were in support of this action being taken by the town. So back in 2007, a street that was a newly developed street at the time was named Langsdorff Drive. So following out from some of the recent initiatives, mainly the renaming of the Graffs Bay Lane, a motion was made at council on November 16th to rename the street. And some of you may have tuned into the meeting to follow along. A very interesting conversation, very spirited on both sides. I think both sides of the debate really made some good points and some strong points, both about why we should consider keeping the name, but also why it should be changed and how times have changed. In the end, council voted 4-3 to rename the street. So staff are currently in the process of organizing an open house to inform the residents of this and working towards finding a new name that we can put forward for the former Langsdorff Drive. So any questions on that one before we move along?
Go ahead, Neil.
I have to ask Councillor Bauer a question. Following that meeting, there was an article in the Toronto Star entitled "An Opportunity to Right a Wrong," and you are quoted as saying, "Street naming is an honor. I doubt Hans Langsdorff was honorable." Could you please comment on that?
Yes, so I don't think that I saw that article, and that is actually a misquote.
Which I hope is the case.
Yeah, so I do believe that street naming is an honor. And what I argued or what I commented on at the council meeting was that for me, there was too many conflicting arguments as to whether or not Hans Langsdorff was a Nazi, was an honorable Nazi. And I didn't feel that if there was that much conflict between who he was, I didn't feel it was right that the benefit of that went to naming the street after Langsdorff.
But you didn't actually say, "I doubt Hans Langsdorff was honorable."
No, I didn't say that sentence. It was misquoted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stephen, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, it's still going to be named Langsdorff in my mind. I don't care if you change the name or not. I'm going to go put little wooden sign underneath what you change. Oh, I shouldn't have said that out loud.
Thank you. And you'll note there is a plaque at that street that does say, and we never talked about whether that plaque was being removed or not, but it does also say that the street was named in honor of Langsdorff.
Okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I guess the one voice that I'm not hearing are the residents of the street who have to go through the trouble now of changing all of their legal documents, their deeds, their insurance policies, their passports.
Their bills.
So no one has mentioned that, and perhaps future councils will take this in mind when they go to practice revisionist history again and rename a street. Personally, as someone who served in uniform, I'm not for the naming of that street myself either. I think there's a bomb girl or two we could honor with that. But that aside, it's the trouble and work that the residents of the street are going to have to go through, all the lawyers involved. And I'm wondering if anybody took that in mind when they went through the motions.
I can speak. I can make a comment on that. Thank you for that comment, Jeff. Yes, actually, Regional Councillor Sterling Lee and I went to Langsdorff prior to the council meeting and knocked on all the doors and did have conversations with the residents who were home and who answered the doors. And part of the conversation was about the need to rename or to put a new address onto their documents if the street name was changed. We didn't receive a lot of pushback on that. There was a couple of people who thought it would be inconvenient but most people understood that, you know, most of that can be done online now and at minimal to no cost. So it wasn't an issue at the time that we knocked on those doors. I think that will likely come up during the open house as a discussion, and I don't know what the feelings will be at that time.
Thank you. Any other? Go ahead, Beverly.
Yeah, what happens if the residents say, we don't want to change it? Because I thought during the council meeting that it wasn't a foregone conclusion it was going to be renamed. It was going to be presented to the residents and then decide what to do afterwards. But what if the residents turn around, like, you know, there's 52 of them. What if 30 of them say, no, I don't want it changed? Will it still go ahead because that's what council wants?
So I think that's something that will play out through the report back to council. So essentially what the council resolution said was that staff was to begin the process of renaming. And part of that process is to have a public open house with the residents of the street. So as part of my report back to council, I will have to provide some information on you know, the general sentiment of this action from the residents. And if, let's say, all 52 residents didn't want this change to happen, well, then that's something that council would have to take into account when they make that final decision. So I think that's largely why the open house is there and why it's been referenced in our street naming policy is something that has to happen when we do change a name. But at this point, the direction that's been given to staff is that the street name will be changing.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, back to you, Mike.
All right, thank you. So the last one's just a quick update on the West Glen historical plaque. So as you recall, at the last meeting, we talked about using the 2020 budget to have a plaque manufactured for West Glen that could be put on the parquet block just north of West Glen, so that we can help tell the story of this important property. So last time around, I provided some draft text and the committee had some feedback on that, which I was able to address over the last few weeks. So just to sort of rhyme through the different things that were raised at the last meeting, one was confirming the spelling of Stephen. That's been done. We have it accurate. There was also discussion about referring to Ms. Westney as a popular school teacher, which has been changed. We added the year to the bottom of the plaque. After the meeting, Pam and I were having some discussions online about the term domestic quarters, because I was using it in reference to a section of the property where it seems like more people were interpreting that as the domestic quarters being the building itself. So that was addressed. And then there were some other general concerns that both I had and some of my colleagues about the language being a little too technical. The word property, I didn't pick up on this one, but my colleague did. The word property appeared in there many, many times. So we tried to reduce that. And then also the reader's context. So there was reference originally to the parquet. The fact is anybody reading this plaque is going to be standing in the parquet as they do. So we can just say this parquet. So all of those changes have been made. It's been sent over to the manufacturer. And this is the proof that we've received back. So I'll read through it for everybody. West Glen is a designated heritage property composed of the domestic section of the former 100-acre Mapledale farm. The property includes a 1.5-story balloon frame farmhouse built by John Elliott in 1856 to a simple Georgian plan. The house was modified in the 1880s to add its many Gothic Revival attributes, such as the gabled dormer windows, front veranda with bell-cast roof, and decorative bargeboard trim at the roofline. Mapledale Farm was sold to Stephen and Janet Westney in 1891 and was then bequeathed to their son William in 1901. William changed its name to West Glen to commemorate the union of his family, the Westneys, and his wife's, the Glendennings. He also used the name West Glen as a prefix to the pedigree of Holstein cattle that he raised on the land. In 1951, the road out front of the farmhouse was renamed Westney Road to celebrate William Westney's contributions to the local community. Both he and his son Henry served upon municipal council for many years, and Henry's wife Dorothy was a local school teacher whose many civic contributions included serving as the first president of the Ajax and Pickering General Hospital Auxiliary. The Westneys retained ownership of the property until 2014, a total of 123 years. This parkette, located on lands that were originally part of the farm, was opened in 2021 to help preserve the rural and agricultural character of this important landmark, erected by Heritage Ajax 2021. So that look good to everyone?
Yeah.
All right.
Good to me.
Just don't let them drop this one.
I know. We'll make sure they put it in a better box this time. So what I'll do then is tomorrow I can send, I can sign off on the proof. We'll get that back to the manufacturing company. They will cast this in Australia, and then they will ship it over to us, and we'll have it ready for next year when the parkette's ready to open.
I can't believe there's nowhere closer than Australia.
It's hard to believe, isn't there? Isn't it? There are a few different companies that do operate locally. When we put out the call for proposals and prices, this company was by far the best price, and we have a relationship with them that stretches back a number of years. So that's the reason we went with them again.
Okay.
One
Brenda,
more. Sorry,
sorry, Neil. Brenda wanted to make a comment.
I beg your pardon. Just
That's okay.
one more question to Mike. What was the official name of the area when this was first built? Is it Pickering Township?
It was Pickering Township. Yep.
Okay. I was just wondered if that was worth adding, but maybe not. Everybody knows that, I suppose.
Okay, go ahead, Brenda.
Are we going to try to plan a plaque unveiling later in the spring, or is this going to be unveiled when the parkette is finished?
The idea at this point is when the parkette is finished. I think this will be something that we keep our eyes on and see what's happening in the world with regard to the COVID pandemic. And ideally, I think, especially given we did a plaque unveiling last year where we weren't able to have the public out, it would be really nice to have an event this time around where we can get all the local residents there. So even if the parkette does open, let's say in April or May, but we're still having to keep our distance and we're not able to have large gatherings, I mean, I think it's something we could absolutely do to hold back on this event until restrictions sort of open up and we can have a full gathering for this.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mike? Nope. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item 4.5. It's a heritage video project update. I'm not sure who's supposed to be leading this conversation, but is that Pam? Is that you?
I don't know. Jeff, do you have anything? We haven't really, I'm not aware of any more progress on it.
Yeah. It's a little stalled right now just because of commitments. I've been named an executor to an estate, which has been taking a lot of my time. So unfortunately, the only contribution I was able to make was to the presentation to council. So now that that's done, we'll turn the camera, if you will, to video moments. So, but yeah, it's there hasn't been much done right now just because of some personal commitments.
Okay, Mike, you had a comment to make?
Yes, so one of the reasons I wanted to add it to the agenda this time around was I had a discussion offline with Anderson, and Anderson said that he would be interested in becoming involved in the project as well. So I thought this might be an opportunity to just put that call out again to individuals and try to determine where their skills and their resources could be applied.
Yeah, my
Very
comment
good.
was more so with just assisting if necessary. Like I know that people at various times have things that get them busy and things like that. So if there was an opportunity, I don't mind jumping in.
I would just add that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what our plan of action was to come up with the text, right? And kind of review that, and then look at what images we could find or take to match the text, and then move into putting it all together and producing it.
Comment?
Neil?
Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, just going back to what we discussed, Pam, back in October. I'm afraid I missed the last meeting, so I didn't know what you said then, but there was emails going back and forward, and you said you had a storyboard ready to go. You used that term. And I'd done a lot of searching through Ajax archives, Pickering archives, the Quaker archives, got pictures off Brenda. I mean, we've got a reasonable amount of stuff.
Perfect.
What's, I mean, that you should have all that, but what's the storyboard? What's the progress on that?
I have the structure for a storyboard. We have to put the stuff in it.
Okay, I thought you'd done that.
So no, because the storyboard would have on the one side what the verbal is going to be, what the text is going to be, and then you match the pictures to what is being talked about. Does that make sense? So first need all of the writing done, and then we would go and say, okay, we're talking about, the whatever, and then you would try to find pictures that would match that. And we talked about including the cemetery in that text as well. So, we would either have to find pictures of the cemetery or we would have to take pictures of the cemetery. Does that make sense? So we first need the writing, and then we towards the way of putting it all together.
Okay, because I did an exhaustive tour. I could not find a picture of Timothy Rogers. I found a picture of a Timothy Rogers, but he was a century out. I thought I'd got one, but even the Quaker archives had not got a picture of Timothy Rogers. So maybe they just didn't like having pictures taken, or it was too early, whatever, I don't know.
Okay.
Free photograph anyway. It'd have to be a drawing, but I couldn't find anything.
If you could send me what you've got, I mean,
I've already sent it to you, Pam. I sent it to you in October.
Yeah, I've got a folder of it all.
All right. So is Jeff putting together an outline then, or what's happening?
Well, now that I can do that, that'll be my next project to do. I wanted to, as I mentioned, I wanted to help contribute to the annual report to council, and that's checked off and done. And lots of people help with that as well. But yeah, I can put that on my to-do list.
Okay, Brenda, go ahead.
Just to reference Neil's comment about photos of Timothy Rogers, you will not find any photos of Timothy Rogers. The family had a house fire many, many years ago, and all the personal belongings, including all the photos, were lost in that fire.
Okay, that's a shame.
Okay. Are there any other comments on this item? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 4.6, archives, Ajax Archives donations of Woodhouse uniform. Brenda, could you go ahead and take that up for me, please?
Yes, just 1 second.
Sure.
I'm just gonna pull up the presentation I have. Okay, so can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I actually got word of this donation very late in the process, but what we have received is the dress jacket that was worn by Captain Woodhouse. Now, Sir Charles Woodhouse served World War II and specialized in gunnery. In 1934, he was made captain, and he was on the Ajax when it responded to assist with the Chilean earthquake at Conception, January 24th, 1939. And Captain Woodhouse was the captain on the HMS Ajax during the Battle of the River Plate. For his part of the action, he was awarded the Companion of the Order of Bath. The Order of the Bath is the fourth most senior of the British Orders of Chivalry. And just for reference, Commodore Harwood at that time, because of course he retired as Admiral, Commodore Harwood was in command of the British squadron of all of the Allied ships, and he was flying his broad pennant on the Ajax during the Battle of the River Plate. But Captain Woodhouse was actually the captain of the ship. So in October 1940, Woodhouse became director of the local division at the Admiralty, and in April 1942, he assumed command of HMS Howe. And in March 1944, he went on to be the director of the Naval Ordnance of the Admiralty, and Admiral Sir Charles Harwood crossed the bar September 23rd, 1978 at the age of 85. Of course, Woodhouse Crescent in Ajax is named after him. So what we have received is a dress jacket. Now, this was donated by the granddaughter of Admiral Woodhouse, and she contacted the mayor about the donation of the uniform. It came in 2 weeks ago, and I was a little surprised to find out what the family had actually sent. But if you look at this photo, you can see the jacket that is worn by the officers receiving their Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of York on HMS Ajax in 1935. That jacket is the same as the one that was sent to us by the family. And if I go back up, you'll note on the sleeves, the gold braid on the sleeves is that of a captain. So we're fairly certain this would have been the jacket that Captain Woodhouse had worn during his period on Ajax during the Battle of the River Plate. So what the family sent was the jacket, a stiff collared shirt, tie, and pants. Now, only the jacket belonged to Captain Woodhouse. The uniform, trousers, and tie belonged to the granddaughter's husband, who was a surgeon captain in the Navy. The stiff collared shirt belonged to her father and is not suitable to wear with a tie. Now, the jacket we got would have been worn with a standard shirt and tie. So for consistency purposes, I would like to keep the display cases within the main display area the same. If we used the trousers, we would have to purchase a much taller display cabinet, and we would have to purchase a full-size mannequin to go in there. But as the trousers were not worn by Woodhouse, then to me, it's really outside of our collection mandate. So my recommendations with this donation is that we use only the jacket that belonged to Captain Woodhouse, that the standard white should be purchased so we can use the tie that was provided. Now, the family's been advised of the issues we have with everything that they sent, And they're okay with us only displaying the jacket. And they were not even concerned about the return of the other items. So I'm suggesting that a replica of the display case currently being used for the Harwood uniform be ordered for the Woodhouse jacket. And for display purposes, I'm also looking at getting a partial torso mannequin for the jacket and the shirt and the tie. And the reason I'm suggesting this is, unlike the Harwood uniform, we don't have a cap, a hat to go with the uniform. So traditionally, if you've just got the jacket, shirt, tie, this is the type of mannequin that would be used for the purpose of display. Okay, any questions on that?
Thank you, Brenda. Are there any questions for Brenda?
I have a comment on it. So Brenda, I agree with just using the jacket that was used by Captain Woodhouse. That's actually a really rare jacket. I'm surprised the family is parting with it. The Royal Navy actually did away with those jackets a couple of years later.
The jacket has just been sitting in a box in our attic, and they felt donating it to us was the best place for it, which I fully agree with.
It's really cool, actually. I think it's super cool that we got our hands on that, and that jacket with a standard issue shirt and tie is perfect. And if you need a standard issue shirt, I know where to get my hands on one.
That would be awesome. I was just gonna buy a regular shirt, but if you've got a standard issue shirt, you know, if we can keep this as authentic as possible, that would be fantastic.
I get an allotment of shirts every year. I can just order you one.
Okay, super.
Would that be something they call a frock coat?
It was a pre-frock coat, so it was actually the frock coat was designed off of that coat.
Right.
That was a very preliminary coat, and they needed it because receiving dignitaries on board ships was so new at that time. Prior to that, they never, like, usually the only dignitaries they had was the royalty that served in the Navy. Most royalty serves in the senior service. And so, sorry, Jeff, had to throw that in there. But yeah, so that was a preliminary design, and they evolved from there quite a bit, actually. So it's pretty cool that we got our hands on that.
I would say it's pretty cool. It's very cool, Brenda. Very cool.
Family has been very, very helpful in identifying all of the ribbon medals that are currently on that jacket, as well as providing me a list of all the medals and awards that Captain Woodhouse had acquired over his Navy career. So similar to what I've done with Harwood, where I have a information board in the display case, and then I have another board.
That's a first.
Difficulty.
Is she frozen or is it me?
We're all moving, so I think
No, she
Froze.
disconnected, I think, or froze.
I'll tell you what, we'll move on to the next. Well, we can't ask Brenda any other questions right now. We'll move on to the next item, item 5, correspondence. So we have anything, Sarah?
No, Mr. Chair, there was nothing received.
Nobody wants to talk to us. Lisa, you're moving your live update. Oh, again, Lisa, update from council. Councilor
Thank you.
Bowers.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do have just a couple of updates. So last month I mentioned to everyone about the ward newsletters that were being created. So they have been completed and sent to the printers. So they will be delivered to every resident next week. So it's pretty exciting. They actually were released, I believe they're being released online as well this week, just in anticipation of the hand-delivered items. So on the front page of those newsletters actually are some advertisements, information about what the town is doing to celebrate the upcoming holiday season and Christmas season. So I thought I would just let you guys know. some of the important dates if you hadn't already heard. So this Friday, December 4th at 7 p.m., there is a Facebook event at facebook.com/myajax, and it's called Cookies and Cocoa with Santa. So it's a 1-hour program put together by the town, just meant to be family friendly and some nice holiday events coming up on the holiday season. So if you're interested, you can tune into that. They also have created a holiday lights tour, which is pretty cool. It's a self-guided, they're calling it a self-guided twinkle tour. So on the town's website, ajax.ca/town events, businesses or residents who have decorated their homes, it's an interactive map where you can add your address if you want to that map. And then residents can download the map on their phones or print a copy and can take a little drive throughout the various neighborhoods in the town to see the Christmas displays. So for example, there's a street in Ward 3 that all the neighbors got together and they all bought those big giant inflatable Santa Clauses. So almost every house on the street has a big giant Santa blow up on their front lawn. So they're on the map. So it's kind of a nice little fun thing to do. Because of course the Christmas parade, the Santa Claus parade was canceled this year because of the pandemic. So that's running until Christmas Eve. And then the annual toy and food drive put on by the mayor and council is still running from now until December 14th for non-perishable food items and new toys. So the drop-off centers are Town Hall, the library, and all 3 community centers. And you can go on the website ajax.ca/drive, and that will give you a list of some of the items that they're looking for. So that will all be the front page of that newsletter that you get next week, but I thought I'd just bring it up, especially for Friday's event because you won't get it before Friday. And this is my last meeting as part of the Heritage Advisory Committee. So I wanted to say thank you to everybody. It was wonderful to work with you and get to know some of you. I really learned a lot in this committee. I'm going to spend the next 2 years on the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and Councillor Ashmead Khan, who currently serves on that, we're going to swap. So you guys will he will bring some entertainment to your committee for sure. So thank you very much, everybody. And that's it for me, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
for your effort.
So that home with the large Santas that Councillor Bauer mentioned is Hills Road in South
Yes.
Ajax, and the residents there are actually also doing their own food drive
Yes.
to go along with you visiting it. So just thought I'd throw that in there.
Thanks, Anderson. Actually, I know some friends on that street, so tomorrow I'm hoping we're going to do our own little video shout out to Hills Road.
It's cool.
Don't tell anybody.
I'm going to take my little one.
Oh, that's so good.
What was the name of the street again?
Hills Road.
Hills Road.
It's off of Clements.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your helping us out there, Councillor Bauer.
Yeah.
Moving along to number 7, is there any other business besides where did Brenda go? Okay.
Yeah.
Chair, Brenda is trying to reconnect. Our apologies. She had some issues with her internet connectivity.
Okay, Pam?
More a question. I'm just wondering, Mike, the house beside McMillan or on Highway 2, is there any update on that? I noticed today when I was by, they've got ladders up on the east side. Looks like they're doing something to it.
So no, I didn't have any updates, but I'm glad you passed along that information. I may have to look into that, or maybe send out our bylaw team, just make sure that everything that's happening out there is authorized. But no,
well, I don't know if it's being used as a fire escape or what, but they've got, like, it looked like there was a ladder up to the window and there was something was going on the east side today. I just wondered
where that one's been left is I believe last time we discussed sending a letter to the owners to say that we were considering designation and seeing whether or not they had any input to that. And I never received anything back. So that was our priority property in terms of designation. Now we also have 625 Kingston Road to focus on. And I think it was largely the pandemic that sort of shifted our attention away from that property. So I think that will get back on track, and I'll try to have a drive by myself and just check out what's going on there.
Mike, did you get a chance to take a look at the two church roofs as well before the snow came down?
I did, just briefly, just a quick drive while I was heading north on Church Street, and it looked pretty good. Like I didn't take a lot of time to see it, and it's difficult now with such limited daylight hours to get out there. But when I did go by, the scaffolding was still up, so I couldn't get any photos. So
yeah, I mean, I go by almost every day down that way because my parents live in the village, and it looks great. Like, I mean, the snow kind of hides it right now, but I thought that the St. Francis one with the different coloring in there and everything like that looks fantastic.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll do my best to get a photo, and then we'll share it as an update at one of the future meetings.
Anyone else with other business? Yeah, we'll go back to 4.6 now that Brenda's feeling better again. She's back with us. Had some final thoughts before you kind of froze there.
Server went right down. I had to reboot it. I'm not sure how much you heard before I got cut out. I was mentioning that the family had provided all of the information on the medals and the awards that Captain Woodhouse had gotten over his career. All of that information with an information board will be in the new display case. So we're just waiting for final approval to order the display case, and at which point I will then order the torso mannequin. And if Anderson, if you can get that shirt for me, that would be awesome. We will use the tie that was provided to us by the family, but the shirt and trousers we're not going to use in the display.
I think I might have a couple of shirts that are brand new and unopened that I can drop off to you this week. So I'll take a look at what uniform parts I have, because I had ordered a bunch pre-pandemic, given that we were having our ceremonial review in June, and that never happened. Well, it happened virtually, so I think they remained in the package.
Okay, that'd be awesome. At your convenience, you can leave them with the security guard just inside the doors. Just make sure you've got my name on there so they know where to send it to.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. We did the correspondence, everything else. So is there a motion to adjourn? No, everyone wants to say. Okay, Councillor Bauer, and a second by Anderson. And we all in favor? Everyone wants to say good. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.